To those who've been watching my channel for over a month now, you probably know that I've done an entire retrospective on the Klonoa series of games. But those who don't know, Klonoa is a 2D platformer about a little cat creature named Klonoa and his adventures throughout the dream worlds. I highly recommend checking out my entire retrospective of the series. I'll do an entire full version sometime in the future, and there is a lot to talk about before the Fantasy Reverie series. But even the most hardcore of Klonoa fans don't even know about this obscure media that a lot of people don't know about. Did you know that Klonoa almost had a movie? Let's talk about it. Oh, in case you're wondering, this is actually a new format I'm going with the channel. Anywho, Klonoa the movie was announced back in July of 2016. The film was originally going to be written by manga creator Hitoshi Ariga. Well, manga creator with apostrophes. But he has written a few handful of adaptations, such as The Big O, and, most prominently, the Mega Man series. And the studio behind the development of the film is a newcomer studio known as Henshin Incorporated. Henshin was founded back in 2014 by anime producer and entrepreneur Rob Pereda, who has quite the impressive resume, being North American CEO and global CSO at the Viewster, Vice President Business Development Network Strategy Office at Bandai Namco Games, Vice President to Licensing of Crunchyroll, and Licensing Specialist at Capcom. He was originally established as entertainment consultancy and investment firm of Henshin, and now focuses exclusively on developing premium content. And the Klonoa movie may have been their first big production, and their only production. This is kind of a big deal, especially considering that Rob Pereda has also worked as a producer for many different projects, including an anime called Wonder Momo, a few anime-based games that I was genuinely surprised actually existed, like Bravo Man, Mappy, as well as the visual novel game Namco High, and even produced the Netflix original series Seis Manos. His recent credit was also as an editorial and publishing for Resident Evil Infinite Darkness. Whether that's a good thing is up to you. Though it wasn't just Pereda and Henshin who were also part of this big project. Ash Paulson, former member of GameXplain and creator of Good Vibes Gaming, was the associate producer of the film, and they even brought in Hideo Yoshizawa, the creator of Klonoa. But it's unsure what his role was within the film's development. So much about this film is completely unknown that there's generally not much to really say about the film, except the fact that it did exist. Heck, there's not really much information about the plot itself. The plot of the film was shrouded in mystery, and some claimed it was a retelling of Door to Phantomile. But Rob Pereda actually did spoke in an interview about the movie, and it's an entirely original plot. Though considering there was no actual film footage to actually be found by Henshin, sometimes projects can be considered fake or speculation or rumor. The only real concrete evidence of the movie's existence is a handful of concept art by the creator, showing Klonoa in a unique design, which is based off Jubilee from the X-Men series, showing that Klonoa was going for an original story. But sadly, 3 years later, on January 5th of 2019, Klonoa movie was officially cancelled, with generally no real information whatsoever about what happened. Until a few days later by Katsuhiro Harada, the known producer of the Tekken series, actually tweeting about the movie. He tells that Klonoa's IP being originally owned by Bandai Namco Entertainment, were actually asked about the Klonoa film situation. Though, believe it or not, Bandai Namco themselves don't even know why it was cancelled. That's because the only real information about the movie would have come from Henshin themselves. Henshin was also an American-based studio. They were given the permission by Namco to actually make a film adaptation of the series, and they even stated it was in pre-production. Bandai Namco gave Henshin a deadline to show their plans of production and revenue and publicity for the film, but after 2 years, there wasn't anything besides a cancellation notification by Henshin themselves. The news itself was actually a surprise to even the writer of the film, Harada. Even doing some research on Henshin themselves, I generally couldn't find anything about the company, so for a desperate act, I decided to actually go to the source itself. So I left an email, and I've heard nothing since. But if I do hear any information whatsoever in the future, I'll let you guys know on my Twitter. Considering there isn't really much to go on for the Klonoa film within its development, the rest of this video will have to be pure speculation. One of the obvious situations is making an original film based off a popular IP. Though Yoshizawa was in the production of the film, it's unsure whether or not Yoshizawa really did have any assistance with the film whatsoever. Not to mention, Klonoa's story in general is fairly confusing if you add up all the spin-offs into the main storyline. But when it comes to original stories based off video games, well, if you've seen the Monster Hunter movie, you can kind of tell those are never good, as video game movies often are given a bad reputation, with the films that were released during Klonoa's production being Resident Evil: The Final Chapter, Tomb Raider, and Rampage. Even though Tomb Raider and Rampage were fairly okay films. Not to mention, if the film were to release between 2019 and 2020, money, it would have had to compete with Detective Pikachu and the Sonic the Hedgehog movie. Henshin Inc. were a fairly new company in the film industry, and the decision to adapt a loved yet forgotten IP seemed difficult for them, and it was potentially stuck in production hell, leading to, well, the sudden cancellation. And we've never seen anything since from Henshin Incorporated. Of all the obscure information I could find about the Klonoa series, I think this is probably the most obscure thing about Klonoa in general. If Bandai Namco were interested in adapting a Klonoa movie, I think a Japanese animation studio would have been the best choice to make a Klonoa film. Probably a studio that was behind the Dragon Quest film and or Lupin III, the first film, with stunning 3D visuals. Imagine it, a Klonoa movie that looked just like the games, with the emotional storytelling of the series. But sadly, we can only think of what could have been. Maybe with a proper revival of the series, aka Fantasy Reverie, maybe a proper Klonoa film can happen someday. But then again, we can only dream. Yeah, that was pretty cheesy. If you guys know of any other obscure media that many people may or may not have heard of, leave them down in the comments below. And make sure to subscribe and ring the bell for notifications for more information on games and animation. Also, make sure to check out my channel near the end of June through July, as I'll be doing an entire marathon dedicated to one of my favorite mobile games, which is sadly coming to an end, Dragalia Lost, which I'm calling Dragalia Month, where I'll be doing a handful of videos based off my favorite moments within the series, whether it be characters, dragons, and something that's been getting really popular recently. But until then, see you next time, guys.